You thought you'd be gone by now. Different job, different place, different life. But nothing went wrong. You're just still here. And that's the strange part. Because when people imagine getting stuck somewhere, they usually imagine something breaking. A crisis, a mistake, a failure, a reason. But that's not what happened. The job was supposed to be temporary. The apartment was supposed to be temporary. The city was supposed to be temporary. Even some relationships were supposed to be temporary. Just things you would keep for now, until things made more sense, until the timing was better, until the next version of your life finally started. Back then, you still believed you were passing through. You remember looking around and thinking, this isn't forever. This is just where I am right now. You told yourself that while unpacking boxes, while signing another lease, while learning the fastest route to work, while memorizing grocery store aisles, and while figuring out which coffee shop stayed open late, you were settling in, but only temporarily. At least, that's what you thought. Then something strange happened. Life became familiar, not exciting, not perfect, just familiar. You stopped checking apartment listings, stopped researching other cities, stopped looking at job postings during lunch, and stopped imagining what came next every day. Not because you made a decision, but because there wasn't an urgent reason anymore. The temporary version still worked. So you stayed a little longer, and then a little longer after that. Usually that's how it happens. Not with commitment, just extension. One more month, one more lease, one more year, one more conversation about moving later, one more promise to revisit the idea soon. The strange thing about later is that it never feels important. Not today, not this week, not this month. There's always time, until there isn't. You can see it in small details. The apartment you never planned to stay in. You know exactly how hard to push the front door, which floorboard creaks, and how long the shower takes to get hot. You know where every charger is, every light switch, every scratch on the wall. You stopped living there temporarily years ago. The city is the same. You move through the place automatically now, like you've lived there forever, even though that was never the plan. That's what feels strange when you really think about it. Nothing looks temporary anymore, except the story you still tell yourself. The life changed, the story didn't. You still think the real version starts later? The better job? The better city? The better timing? The better version of you? But years can disappear inside that sentence. The real version starts later. That's what makes it hard to notice. Every decision makes sense. The lease renewal makes sense. The job still pays well enough. The move can wait another year. The relationship isn't bad. Nothing feels urgent. Nothing forces a decision. So life keeps moving, without ever really changing direction. Most people imagine major life changes happen through dramatic moments, but a lot of lives are shaped by things that never felt important enough to decide. You don't wake up one morning and choose permanence. You simply stop questioning what was supposed to be temporary. Then one day, you notice something uncomfortable. You can't remember the last time you seriously planned to leave. Not just talked about it, not just imagined it. Actually made plans. Actually started moving. Maybe years have passed, maybe longer. Without noticing it, something changed. You stop being someone who's leaving and become someone who's planning to leave. Those sound like the same person. They aren't. Someone who's leaving starts looking, starts planning, starts making moves. Someone who's planning to leave usually doesn't. The move happens next year. The new job happens after this project. The new city happens when the timing is better. The real life starts after one more adjustment, one more year, one more lease, one more reason to wait. Over time, planning to leave becomes part of your identity. Not something you do, something you tell yourself, something you assume is still coming. People can spend years inside a life they never intended to keep, because in their mind, they're still on their way out. One day you realize something strange. You still tell yourself you might move someday, but you can't remember the last time you picked a city, and nobody notices the moment a temporary decision becomes a permanent life. You see this everywhere. People who were going to move after a year, 10 years later, they're still there. People who took a job to get by, now it's their career. There wasn't a crisis. It just kept working. So it was easy to stay, because things that work rarely get questioned. You stop comparing this life to the one you planned. You start comparing it to yesterday. And yesterday looked pretty much the same, not because staying was your dream. It just kept making sense, and eventually, the backup plan worked. That's the problem. It worked. Not enough to become the dream, enough to keep putting it off. And because it worked, leaving never felt necessary. Nothing screamed for a decision. The move could wait. Everything else could wait. So it did. That's how you end up staying. You were still moving forward, still earning, still functioning. That's what made it so hard to notice, because the thing that was never supposed to be permanent kept solving enough problems to survive another year. Then another. The backup plan became life. And once that happens, something else changes. You stop measuring life against where you wanted to be. You start measuring it against whether it still works. Can I pay the bills? Yes. Can I get through the week? Yes. And somehow, that became the goal. It happened slowly, not all at once. Just little by little. It doesn't have to be great. It just has to keep working. After a while, that becomes the only question. Does it still work? So you wait. And then you wait a little longer, because there's no reason not to. Then one day you look around and realize how familiar everything has become. The route, the routines, the faces, the habits, the excuses, the version of life you once described as temporary. Because later kept making sense. And before you knew it, another few years had passed. That's the part that lingers. Because regret would almost be easier. Regret usually comes from a bad decision. This comes from decisions that all made sense. Every step was reasonable. Every delay was understandable. And yet somehow, they all led to the same place. Here. The place you were never supposed to stay this long. The life you thought was still temporary. The version you assumed you would eventually outgrow. That's usually when it hits you. A random Tuesday. A familiar drive home. Standing in a kitchen you've memorized. Looking around an apartment that was supposed to be temporary. And suddenly noticing how long you've been here. Not physically, but mentally. Emotionally. In every way that mattered. The thought shows up quietly. No drama. No breakdown. Just a strange thought. I really thought I would have left by now. Life didn't go wrong. You didn't get trapped. Nobody stopped you. It's realizing the temporary version worked so well that it became your actual life. Then one morning, you wake up and realize you never left.